Hello, my name is Adam Neely. This is question and answer time number 18. I'm here answering all of your questions about bass and music in general, so let's get started.
Question and answer time with Adam.
I'm planning on going to Berklee. Would you not suggest it?
So I really don't want to discourage anybody from going to Berklee because it was quite an amazing experience for me. You might be discouraged from going to Berklee or any other music school if you watch that things that you don't learn in music school video, and I don't really want you to feel like you shouldn't go to music school by any stretch. I just wanted to give a slightly different perspective on the whole situation that maybe you haven't been exposed to, because most of the time Berklee and other music schools are really good at making you think that they are the place that you need to go to if you want to get the skills that you need to survive in the real world of being a professional musician. And it's true to a certain extent, but maybe not to the extent that like a slick marketing package like Berklee would have you believe. Yes, you will become a fantastic musician if you go to music school and you really apply yourself and learning your music theory, learning your history, and also just jamming with all the great musicians who are at a music school. But at the same time, there are some other things to understand. For example, at a place like Berklee, where it's essentially you're just surrounded by music students all the time, it can give you sort of a false perspective on the quality of what you need to be able to do in the real world. People get this idea that if they are the best musicians at Berklee, they will be the best musicians in the real world. It's the people that I've seen like go the furthest weren't the people that were in the highest level ensembles at Berklee. They're the people that really applied themselves after Berklee. So there's just a lot of things to keep in mind when you're thinking about music school and then what happens afterwards if you're going to be a professional musician.
Hey Adam, could you address this new AG 432 Hz mumbo jumbo? I used to play with a couple of guys that were into this stuff and it drove me nuts. Suffice to say, I no longer waste my time inhaling their secondhand weed smoke, but I still know a few musicians that are self-proclaimed 432ers. Is there anything to it?
If you don't know what it is, basically a lot of people on the internet and elsewhere think that retuning A to mean 432 Hz versus 440 Hz, which is our current standard, will somehow make your music more in tune with the natural vibrational frequencies of the universe or whatever. A great video for explaining all of this, by the way, is Frank Javse's video on A equals 432. He goes through a lot of fun stuff in his typical meme-filled aesthetic way, and it's a great video, so definitely check it out. And I really don't buy into any of the new age stuff, but there are 3 reasons why it might be fun, or reasons why you might want to retune your instruments to A equals 432. The first reason is not really a musical reason. It's kind of like just a logical mathematical reason. It's basically, if A equals 432, C will equal 256 Hertz. And that's kind of nice because then the note C, all of the octave displacements of C will be powers of 2. So C an octave higher than 256 will be 512, a power of 2. C an octave lower will be 128, a power of 2. It's just kind of nice when you're trying to do interval calculations, but it has absolutely nothing to do with music or the way that our brains work. The other reason why it's kind of nice to retune to A equals 432 is it's because it's slightly easier to sing certain operatic repertoire, because historically A was tuned a lot lower than it is now, a lot lower than A equals 432. In fact, in Mozart's time, it was closer to A equals 420. So that means a lot of Mozart's repertoire is very difficult to sing in contemporary tuning, especially things like the Queen of the Night aria from the Magic Flute. It's just ridiculously high. So lowering the pitch to A equals 432 or 430 or even lower just kind of makes sense if you're trying to sing that stuff. The final reason is something that I've mentioned before. Our ears are so accustomed to A equals 440, so any difference just makes things sound new and fresh. So if you just retune your guitar or your bass to A equals 432, it's going to sound slightly different than what you're used to, and that might be kind of nice. Or you could retune it to A equals 430 or A equals 445, for example. That's slightly higher, and so it's going to sound a little bit more tensious rather than the little bit lower, more mellow A equals 432. It's just because we're used to these certain tunings, that's the reason why it sounds different. It has nothing to do with any sort of like being in tune with the vibrational frequency of the universe or anything like that.
Is this tied in any way to binaural beats?
So kind of. I was going to talk a little bit about binaural beats, but the video is getting too long. So if you don't know what binaural beats are, it's this other new agey thing. It's basically your brain waves occur at certain super low frequencies, and if you create a sine wave or create a wave and beam it into your head, it was supposed to like make your brain think on a certain wavelength or whatever. And the way that you do this is you basically play one tone in one ear and another tone in another ear, the difference between the two that's supposed to like activate your brain. So if you play 440 in one ear and 432 in the other, it creates a difference of 8 Hertz, and then entrain your brain to vibrate vibrate at 8 hertz, which is, I don't know exactly what that is, but it's some sort of level of consciousness, whatever. Anyway, binaural beats, it's kind of similar.
Hello, Adam. Love your videos, but this subject was pretty boring with apparently no musical application. Give me my 840 minutes back. JK, peace.
Well, I thank you for your feedback. I actually did sort of think that as I was making the video. Is this actually worth it? Is there enough musical application for all of this stuff? And perhaps there really isn't that much direct musical application for it, but I found it interesting anyway. And, I just like learning things and I like sharing things that I've learned with other people. So take that as you will.
Hey, Adam. As a fellow musician, I was just wondering how you manage/organize all your sheet music and score. Do you keep it on paper or digital? Both? What do you keep and what do you throw away? Do you have any system? By the way, thanks for the great videos. I really enjoy them. Greetings, Plautus.
So I have all my stuff just saved digitally as PDFs. I don't really use paper music all that often because it's just, there's so much stuff that I might need at any given point in time. And it's just nice to be able to like search it, press Apple spacebar and type in what I need to do on my computer. But for iPad stuff, I use Adobe Reader and it's just really fast. Basically, I can bring up whatever chart from hundreds and hundreds of charts I might need for a GB gig. So that's usually how I deal with all my sheet music.
When we play a string on a guitar or bass, we hear the fundamental as well as notes from the harmonic series, which affects the instrument's timbre. I've sometimes wondered what would happen if we had a string playing a note that is below the audible frequency range, but whose harmonics are in the audible frequency range. Considering our ears and brains have become accustomed to relating the fundamental to the harmonics, how do you think our brain would perceive and interpret such a note?
So when we actually play the note low E on our bass guitar, that vibrates at 40 hertz. That's the fundamental. If you're in any way involved in sound engineering, you know that 40 hertz is absurdly low. In fact, on most recordings, or especially in live applications, a lot of people actually just low pass everything down below 50 hertz. So why are we able to hear low E? Well, it's because on bass guitar and regular guitar, you're not really hearing the fundamental. You're actually mainly hearing the first harmonic, which is up an octave. So you're hearing mainly 80 hertz. And that's important to know because a lot of sound engineers recommend that you low pass below 75 hertz for bass guitar, but you still hear everything just completely fine. Your ear just understands it normally to mean like, oh, hey, this is an E. And so on like low extended range basses, like ones which go down to F sharp or even the E below E, you're dealing with things which the human ear technically can't even really hear or reproduce, but your brain can understand it just fine because those strings are so rich with harmonics, especially that first harmonic, which really is the one that you're hearing and feeling.
Actually, you can do something very similar to the tuning fork on paper thing with string instrument. You just need to pluck the string on the fret an octave higher than the one you are actually pressing down. This produces an OC2 kind of effect. I
know Michael League of Snarky Puppy has shared that effect. It's a really cool one, and I think what's happening when you're doing that is you're isolating the fundamental rather than the first harmonic. This is kind of what the OC2 does, and it's what gives it its really unique flavor and sound. So it's definitely something fun to screw around with, and it's a cool technique. So thanks for sharing.
Hi, Adam. Have any companies approached you yet with offers to demo their gear or even build you a custom bass/pedal, etc.? I know you've said you're not much of a gearhead and you're happy with what you own, but if I had a company that made basses/pedals/amps, I'd jump at the chance to work with an educated gigging player/composer as a presence on social media, such as yourself. More broadly, have you had any experiences with music gear manufacturers that you found of note?
So yes, actually, I got my first request for a gear review. And essentially what it would be is that this company would send me a piece of gear and ask me to use it on my channel and then just talk about it a little bit. I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not to say yes for a couple reasons. Not necessarily because it would be selling out, I really don't care about that, but mainly because the focus of this channel is not really about gear. And if, I was like Rob Chapman or Glenn Fricker or whatever, and those guys, they talk about gear all the time and how to use gear and what sorts of gear that you should use, that would make perfect sense. But that's not really what my channel is about. My channel is about music. My channel is about bass and more along the lines of theory, philosophy, history. I was trying for the longest time to figure out how to incorporate this piece of gear into a lesson or how to incorporate it into some sort of broader exploration of music in general. And I'm still trying to think about that because unless I do that, I'm diluting my brand. I'm diluting Adam Neely, the bass musician instructor brand. And that's a very important thing to me, is to be able to say, like, this is what I do on this channel exclusively. I'm still on the fence, but though, so you might see that piece of gear in a future video. We'll see.
Yo, ADAM. Can you continue working on that Bang Bang song you covered in the clapping music video? That stuff was catchy. I need a full version of that Clarity cover in my life. So fucking good.
So I like that people enjoyed those clips, but honestly, that's what those clips are gonna be. I'm not gonna work on any of that anymore, but thank you so much for enjoying them and listening to them. It is very encouraging because I do spend time with them and I want to see what else I can do with those concepts.
That brightness etude sounds so good. I'm kind of clueless as far as non-functional harmony is concerned, but this is a nice starting point. Do you have any recommendation for us how to create some modern sounding chord changes like these? Thanks, smiley face.
So a great simple technique for writing interesting non-functional harmony. Basically, you just write a simple melody, not even a melody, just like a series of whole notes. Then what you do is you try and assign, you're just going to kind of randomly assign each note in that melody an upper extension of a chord. So say that you had the note D, that could be the 9 of a C minor 9 chord, or it could be the 13 of an F7 13 chord, or it could be the 11 of an A minor 7 flat 5 chord. So basically any kind of note can have we call it polyvalence. It can mean different things depending on different contexts. And that's a fun way of at least trying to think about creating weird harmony, because the chords that you come up with won't have any relationship to one another, but they will have a relationship to the melody note. And that's one of the things you'll find in old fusion records, is that you'll have these very long, simple, almost boring melodies, but the harmony underneath it will be really complicated because the melodies are always hitting the 9ths, the 11ths, the 13ths, and sometimes the 7ths of the chord, not necessarily the roots or the 3rds or the 5ths.
But what if I suck?
Then don't.
Hey Adam, awesome as usual, man. It's always very entertaining to watch your videos and follow your always interesting ideas and concepts. Just another question related to Berklee and its auditions. I'm from Argentina, so say I graduate from a local music college with a jazz guitar program and prepare my audition for Berklee. Would it be that hard to get a full tuition scholarship? I've been searching for information around the internet, but haven't been very lucky with it, so I'm kind of lost. I just don't know how it is to pay for your education in the States with a middle-class salary, supposing I get a job there.
So I really hate to dash anybody's hopes here, but do not expect to get a full tuition scholarship to Berklee from Berklee. It just never happens, and when it does, it's kind of rare because it's going to entice people who are already kind of famous within a particular field to come to Berklee, and that's only a couple people every year out of thousands. The thing that you have to understand is Berklee doesn't have an endowment the same way that a school like Harvard might. Harvard has an endowment of, I think, like $2 billion or something ridiculous like that, and they use that money to help people out and give them scholarships. I would suggest this: domestic students have the ability to take out loans and federal loans from the government, and yay, we can go to Berklee, but we'll be in debt for forever. If you're a foreign student, check in with your country's government. Maybe they have a program for studying in the US if you then come back and teach in your country. I know a guy from Ecuador. He studied at NYU for a couple years on the Ecuadorian government's dime, on the stipulation that he go back to Quito to teach for 3 years. So maybe that's an option for you. Otherwise, just don't really. It's not really an option, sorry.
I noticed there is an A harmonic major scale that you refer here. Simply put, what is a harmonic major scale? What does that mean?
Harmonic major is the major scale with the lowered 6th degree. So if we're talking about C harmonic major, that's C, D, E, F, G, A flat, B, C. It's a very strange scale. You don't use it that often, but it can be kind of fun to mess around with, especially when you're talking about the modes of the harmonic major scale, because that's when things can get kind of fun. You can have things like Dorian flat 5, which I really like the sound of Dorian flat 5. Check that scale out. It's a really fun one to mess around with. Or like Phrygian flat 4. Really strange one, but really fun. And it's just completely untapped, at least when you compare it to things like the major scale or the harmonic minor or the melodic minor. So it's just something to mess around with if you have the time to.
Loving the content, can't help but binge in your stuff. 2 questions. I see many live musicians paying without any ear protection at all or with their in-ears out. I'm very diligent with wearing protection, and yet I've recently found my ears have been somewhat damaged from loud volumes, faint tinnitus, etc. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Please, yes, kids, if you can at all help it, use ear protection of some sort. I probably haven't used it as much as I should have, and I'm kind of paying the price for it because I have a little bit of tinnitus. One time though, funny story, I got really, really bad tinnitus in my right ear after playing a show in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I was like really for a while, just it was like this pounding ringing in this right ear, and I thought I had ruptured like an eardrum or something. It was just really bad. So I went to the ENT to see if they could, I don't know what they would do. And they had, prepped me like, oh, tinnitus, there's no like cure. So, these are the things that you might need to like do for the rest of your life. And I was like really freaked out about it. And then it turned out they looked inside my ear. It's like, oh, wait, there's something inside here. And I had attempted to protect my ears with tissue, which sometimes works, but at that particular show, I didn't pull out all of the tissue, and some got lodged deep in my ear and it was causing the bad ringing. So use ear protection, but make it good ear protection and not just half-assed ear protection, because then you could go to the ENT and then survive a month of really, really bad ringing, which is terrifying.
2. Do you know of any content similar to yours, but with a drumming/percussion/rhythmic focus?
So I definitely get asked this question a lot. Do you have anything like your channel, but different? And I understand why people ask that because, kind of I started this channel as a bass channel. It still has like a bass bent to it all, but it's a little bit different. There's a little bit more general music knowledge stuff being applied to everything. And I think maybe there's a market to be tapped. If you want to start a channel that is similar to mine, but with like a drum focus or a guitar focus, whatever, go ahead, man. I guess there's a need for it because I get asked that question a lot. The one thing I'll say is if you want to check out an amazing channel that is drum focused, check out JP Bouvet's blog series. This guy not only is an amazing drummer, but he makes some incredibly entertaining and informative blogs. So please check out JP Bouvet, man. Not really the same thing as my channel, but you should definitely still check it out.
Hey Adam, I'm going to New York in a couple months with my school band and was wondering if you have any opinions on must-see things. Is it really worth it to see the Statue of Liberty or just better explore around and kind of just enjoy the vibe of the city? Thanks.
Definitely check out Rockwood Music Hall. Overpriced drinks, but man, is it a great hub for music in the city. Snarky Puppy kind of got their start in New York at Rockwood Music Hall, and there's all sorts of cool, interesting musical things happening there all the time. Lower East Side of Manhattan, if you really just want to wander around there in the evening, there's all sorts of local color. It's kind of seedy down there, but there are a lot of great rock venues like Arlene's Grocery and Mercury Lounge and pianos, and it's just, New York is starting to become hyper sanitized because of how utterly gentrified and how much money is being poured into there. But the Lower East Side still has a lot of that New York color. Same thing with the East Village and the West Village. Just the villages in general is kind of like classic New York downtown scene. Great stuff. If you want to venture out into Brooklyn, there's Williamsburg and Bushwick. There's a lot of art stuff happening, maybe less than Williamsburg now because it's, again, hyper sanitized, super gentrified. Bushwick is definitely headed that direction, but that's still a neighborhood which is kind of cool. It's like a lot of abandoned warehouses and type things, but then people will have these crazy parties out there and there's a lot of stuff happening. Those are some suggestions. Otherwise, normal tourist shit. Central Park, Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty. Go for it.
Do you use bass as the foundation of your compositions? Why or why not?
Sometimes, but honestly not that often. It is fun to create bass lines which are complicated and interesting to play, but I find it a little bit more inspiring to start with some harmony or write at the piano or, in general, explore a little bit more away from the instrument that I play and then come up with something on the bass guitar that complements that compositional thing later. I just find that a little bit more of a inspiring sort of workflow.
Who mixes the audio in the Sungazer pieces?
I mix the audio in Sungazer. I had a very jolting realization a couple days ago when I listened to a mix I was working on in a car radio, and I realized that it was horrendously unbalanced in the bass. It was just nothing but low end. And I was just oh, god damn. So these speakers are awesome, but they have no low end, so I have to learn how to dial it back so it doesn't sound unbelievably terrible in car radio speakers. It was really, really rough. But yeah, I do the mixing. It's always a learning process, so yeah.
Speaking of the Rite of Spring, have you heard the Bad Plus's rendition of Rite of Spring?
Yeah, I checked that out once. I really should check it out again, though, because I don't remember a whole lot, but I remember liking it. I really do like when jazz groups reinterpret famous classical works, because it can, with the right sort of musicians and the right sort of arranger, it can really bring to light some really interesting new nuances from the pieces. The thing that I'm thinking about really is Duke Ellington's take on Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. Duke Ellington's version is awesome. Definitely check out his Nutcracker Suite. It's super, super cool.
This guy's an idiot. He shouldn't be talking about free improv, patronizing guff. Like Boris Johnson, he thinks Latin makes him cool. What a fool.
You are right. When people think about me, they think about Boris Johnson. I am sorry for talking about free improv. I know that greatly offended you.